another edition of Fireside Chats. I'm Executive Director at Woodcrest, Bill Cleese, sitting next to the former Executive Director, the original Executive Director, Cliff Martin, and alongside of him is the person who was alongside of him during those years at Woodcrest as well, his wife, Carol. Why don't you guys go ahead and just share a little bit about who you are and your time at Woodcrest.
Well, as Bill said, my name is Cliff Martin, administrator / executive director for 29 years at Woodcrest, and my wife Carol and I worked together side by side for most of those years, and we raised our 4 children. We didn't live on camp, but our children would have felt that they lived on camp many times. But it was a good time, a good place, a good way to raise a family. And God blessed those many years of our time there, and hopefully we can share some of those stories.
And I'm Carol, and like Cliff said, I have served at Woodcrest for 27 years. Some of that started in our home. The early office hours were spent here in our home, and then we were very excited when we finally got a temporary office up at Woodcrest.
It's not the temporary office, it's still there, is it?
It's still there.
Yeah, the temporary office,
yes.
You're still
Okay.
working out.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So our children are now grown, they're adults, and we now have 4 grandchildren, which have brought a lot of joy to our lives as well.
Excellent. And I think it's exciting. I mean, all your kids were involved in some role at Woodcrest over the years, correct?
That's correct. Some more than others.
Right.
Dustin in particular, we talk about every once in a while. We would take him along. We would assign him jobs. He would get them done and then sit in the van and read a book. And we thought he would never work at Woodcrest because that's kind of the way, as a 12-year-old, that's kind of the way he responded. But he ended up serving 9 years, nine summers as director, and he continues to come back and speak for a week.
And Celeste, our daughter, would have served in the office over the summer, for 2 summers, I believe, and Sheldon had served as a day camp counselor, and Brandon had served as day camp and overnight counselor for several years as well.
And also loved being Jed in the Journey to Bethlehem for many Christmas journeys.
And you were able to bring, this year I saw you brought the grandkids to Journey.
We
So
did.
starting now, a 3rd generation.
That's
And
correct.
it was fun to experience the journey through the eyes of grandchildren rather than adults. So
Good. Well, I'm excited to hear some of the stories, some of the history, because obviously so much of Woodcrest growth happened during your time of leading the ministry. And so just hearing those passions, those stories. But I guess what got you connected to Woodcrest initially?
Well, Carol and I had spent a year in voluntary service in Homestead, Florida, and when we had left, we were attending a church 20 minutes from where we were living, and in Homestead, we lived a mile from the church, and we made the determination that when we returned, we would find a church closer to where we were living, and Effort of Mennonite Church happened to be the church that we chose at that point, and we began attending there. And Effort of Mennonite was people from Effort of Mennonite were very instrumental in starting Woodcrest. So I was approached by Malin Zimmerman one Sunday morning, asking if I'd be available on a Saturday to come up for a work day to help clean up. And I was, so I went up and helped that Saturday and began asking more questions. So what is Woodcrest? How does it work? Does it function? And so I know, as oftentimes when you ask questions, they think you're interested. And I was, and out of that, I was asked to become an association member, which we did, and then I was asked to be on the executive committee, and out of that, as vision was coming forth out of that, more time was given, and in the fall of 1991, October, I began working for Woodcrest 1 day a week. Had my other full-time job at that point, but could do both, and began developing, more ideas what could be happening, and of course Carol and I bounced a lot of those ideas off of each other, and soon that had grown to I ought to have 2 days a week. So in 1993 I went to 2 days a week, but before I was volunteering on the executive committee for 2 years, before I was asked to give that one day a week. And Woodcrest couldn't afford paying anybody, but I had 4 children at home. If I was going to give any time, direct time, 1 day a week, Malin Zimmerman, actually, who was president of the association at that time, said, I believe in what we're talking about as far as vision, where Woodcrest can go. I will pay you out of my personal business 1 day a week, and that's what he did. And over that time too, I also knew that if we wanted to grow and develop, we ought to really have a board of directors versus an executive committee. So I mentioned to Malin, I think, I don't want to work. I don't feel it'd be helpful for me to work for a board, not just an executive committee. And he said, I agree. Put a board together. So along with his help, we began tapping individuals on the shoulder, and a board got developed. And the executive committee at that point was people from the Ephrata Mennonite Church. And we intentionally went outside of the Ephrata Mennonite Church and asked board people to be on the board, so we could expand kind of the reach. And most people thought that Woodcrest Retreat was owned by Ephrata Mennonite Church because it was started by a men's Sunday school class that bought the original property, and then they began a day camp program on the property. So the church and Woodcrest Retreat were pretty much integrated for many, many years, even though they were 2 different entities. Woodcrest Retreat Association was its own separate entity, happened to be the same people that attended Ephrata Mennonite Church that were also part of the association. So we had to educate the new board members to say, this is a separate entity. You could be an association member, and so we began the board when over the same time I kind of started 1 day a week. Well, at the end of the year, Malin comes to the board meeting and says, well, I paid Cliff 1 day a week. I think it's time for Woodcrest Retreat to pay him. And the board swallowed and decided that they can do that. So Woodcrest Retreat then began paying my salary 1 day a week at that point, and when it grew to 2 days a week, and then grew to full time.
So this whole time, Carol, obviously this is growing and big, and so getting bigger. Are you thinking what do we get ourselves into? Or are you the whole way this is exciting? And
I was excited about it because part of my desire when I was in youth was I always thought it would be neat to work at a summer camp, and never pursued it. But I love office work and I love the outdoors, and I thought camp would be a good setting. So when this came about, it was just sort of neat to see that happen. In fact, when Cliff and I were dating, he had a motorcycle, and we would go motorcycle riding different Sunday afternoons. And and the one day he took me up to Woodcrest. We rode through the property, and I asked him, I said, what is this? And he wasn't really sure. And he said, I said, this would be a neat place to have a summer camp. And so when this started coming together through Ephrata Mennonite Church, and he was involved, it was just sort of like a God thing, that God was opening a door for us to work in camp ministry that we had never pursued. And that was never, we never directly pursued being involved in camp ministry. So it just felt like it was God leading us into this. Yes, during the beginning years, we were very, very busy, because at one point he was holding 3 different jobs, and our children, we had 4 children who were very small at the time. And there was a lot of times where I wish that he would have been home more to help with the kids. But we worked through it, and it was a journey that God put us on, that we look back with fondness and have no regrets that that's where God led us.
Yeah, that motorcycle ride was probably the summer of 1983, and this was when we switched churches and made all of that. Would have been about 6 years later.
Wow.
So that comment that she made to me, I mean, I never went to camp as a child. I grew up on a dairy farm, and we worked in the summer. So camp was not part of who I was. She went to camp for 1 week, and served, I think, 1 week at Camp Hebron, and enjoyed that situation and
pool in Mountain View, and then that left you for the new big Indian Rock Center renovation.
That did, but even before all of the development kind of things, we were able to build a maintenance building.
That's right.
Which was a huge blessing to be able to store our equipment in, because we just had this little A-frame where that was at. And then we built an office in the corner of that maintenance building, and that was my office for numbers of years before the temporary office arrived with that. But that worked well, because I was also the maintenance guy. So my office was there, and I could just walk out and work on it, work on things as well for many years. But then, Phil was hired part-time, and then the maintenance man was hired part-time, and they both eventually went to full-time.
Okay. So, great. And you oversaw a number of staff transitions. Phil was there for a long time. And then Ben Martin came for program. You added some staff. For a while, you had 2 programs, and you had some maintenance.
Will Warner.
Pardon?
Will was there.
Will was there. I know Jason Martin, who's still on staff as our operation, was there for 10 years.
He was there for 8, gone for 8, and he's back again.
So, but you guys had a vision. That's exciting.
And there's still things on the paper that aren't done. Isn't done yet.
It's not done yet.
Yeah. You're working towards.
We're working towards. Yeah, we're excited. I mean, coming in. I mean, for me personally, just knowing that how much was done ahead of time, and knowing that my skill set is not your skill set. I'm not the building planner, designer, sewage person. To be able to do what God has equipped me to do, knowing that you've already laid that foundation, is so appreciative and so exciting. So what would you say would be the moments, the stories that inspired you to keep on going through, despite the sewer problems, despite other obstacles that came along?
I'll let Carol start on that one.
Yeah, well, the one story that was really special to me, was at our open house. Every April we have an open house where parents can come with their children to explore whether this is a place where they want to send their children to camp. And so this was back in 2014. There was a mother and a son who arrived very early. They were very eager about camp. They wanted to find out all about the summer camp program. And so they started asking a lot of questions, and she said, I noticed on your website that you say you're a Christian camp. What does that mean? And so I explained to her that every day that they will go to a Bible class, they will have a Bible story, they'll learn a Bible memory verse, they'll sing songs about God, and that's all intermingled, with the fun and the activities. And she looked at me and she said, well, he doesn't know anything about God. And for me, that was just a moment where it's like, and this is what camp is all about. And I told her, I said, that's fine. I said, just send him to camp, and he'll learn things as he goes along. And so she sent him to camp that summer for 5 weeks, and so that gave us 40 days to plant seeds of faith into his young heart. And we were told at the end of the summer that he had a very enjoyable time. And he said that the Bible lessons weren't even boring. So that child came to camp for several more years. I'm not sure how many in total. Eventually he came to overnight camp, and I know that there was one summer that he did indeed give his heart to Jesus. And so that was just a story that stuck with me. That's what camp is about. Bringing children, helping them grow in their faith if they already know the Christian and the Bible stories, but also there's many that are just being introduced to God and Jesus for the first time.
We meet new friends, and we get to hold animals and get to know about nature. So it's Christ and nature all together in his home. It's awesome to be here.
You can tell they're filled by the Spirit while they're here. The weeks they're here, they come home and they're excited about what they're learning at camp.
It's a lot of fun. We do a lot of songs, and it's really fun. And we do a lot of cool stuff like the water slide.
Woodcrest Retreat is indeed about fun. It's also about making new friends, being out in God's creation, learning from the Bible, having an opportunity to strengthen our relationship with God and with one another, and for some, a chance to get to know God's love for the first time and be drawn into a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. For more than 40 years, Woodcrest Retreat has offered people a place for spiritual growth and renewal.
Just exciting for me to see what God can use in a place like this where people can just get away and relax and just meet God in a new way, and seeing relationships develop and grow within families.
I appreciate the spiritual influence as well as the recreational fun my children have here and the friends that they make. Also just the influence of the counselors. I've been impressed with their spiritual commitment and just the fact that they're a good role model for my children when they're here.
The kids definitely talk to counselors about a lot of things in their life, a lot of different areas they need to grow in and want to grow in. They bring their problems to the counselors.
You can just see the amazing changes that were made in the kids' lives.
This year I've grown incredibly much in my faith, and it's just kind of refreshing and definitely a good way to ground my faith and just set my heart on fire for God.
It's neat that they have a local place that they can come and be fulfilled and just have that time and that they can fellowship with other kids and get to know each other and also fellowship and praise the Lord.
I come back to Woodcrest each year because I just absolutely love the place. It's a wonderful place to see God's creation and to participate in ministry, to touch kids' lives, and it's the place where I have seen God work in such amazing ways, so faithfully and continually, and I'm drawn back to it because I'm drawn to Christ.
When we were younger, we had tent meetings, we had evangelistic meetings. These kids today, they have camp. Camp is where they come to know the Lord. If not, at least we plant a seed for the future.
The games, having fun together, worshiping together, creating a community in a short period of time really brings people to understand that there is a God, that He has died for us through Jesus Christ, and that He is calling us to make a decision to follow Him. And I believe by having quality staff and quality speakers and good programming brings that all together, and God's Spirit then can really connect in a child's life and make a difference through what happens here.